Have you ever felt caught? Not by anything physical, but trapped between two invisible walls. On one side, there's a suffocating pressure of expectation. The rules, the routines, the well-trodden path that society, your family, and even you yourself have laid out. It's safe, it's predictable, it's orderly, but it's also rigid. A cage, even if it's gilded. Every day feels like a repeat of the last, a slow, quiet fading of the vibrant person you once imagined you'd be. Then there's the other side, the terrifying, wide-open expanse of chaos, the abyss of infinite choice, of no rules, of total freedom. It sounds liberating, but when you stand at its edge, it's paralyzing. Where do you even start? What if you choose wrong? The anxiety of that unstructured freedom can be just as imprisoning as the rigid rules. We seem to be eternally caught in this paradox, oscillating between a thirst for security that stifles us and a yearning for freedom that overwhelms us. It's the fundamental dilemma of the human spirit. How do you build a life that is both stable enough to withstand the storms and flexible enough to allow for growth, passion, and genuine novelty? How do you find that razor's edge between tyranny and chaos where meaningful life is actually lived? This isn't just a philosophical musing. It's the quiet battle waged in our minds every single day. And one man, a clinical psychologist from the cold northern prairies of Canada, Jordan Peterson, became obsessed not just with this question, but with the catastrophic consequences of getting the answer wrong. He saw it in the stories of his clients, in the bloody history of the 20th century, and in the timeless myths that have guided humanity for millennia. This isn't just about a book he wrote. This is a journey into the heart of that fundamental human struggle, a quest to find the path that leads not to order, not to chaos, but to what lies beyond. Before Jordan Peterson articulated the 12 rules that lie beyond order, he first had to contend with a world drowning in the lack of it. His earlier work, 12 Rules for Life, was a direct response to what he saw as a rising tide of nihilism and a dangerous abdication of personal responsibility. He was speaking to a generation adrift, often told that all structures were oppressive, that all traditions were suspect, and that the ultimate goal was a kind of untethered, undefined freedom. He saw in his clinical practice the devastating result of this philosophy. He saw young men who couldn't speak to women, who lived in their parents' basements lost in the digital ether, their potential dissolving into a fog of inaction and resentment. He saw young women so overwhelmed by the sheer number of possible life paths that they were paralyzed into choosing none of them, consumed by an anxiety that had no name. The world was a maelstrom of chaos, and people had forgotten how to build a ship. So he gave them the tools. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Tidy your room. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. These were not mere suggestions. They were foundational principles for creating order out of the chaotic mess of an unexamined life. They were a call to arms, a demand that you take responsibility for your own small corner of the world and make it a little less hellish. And for millions, it was a lifeline. People began to build their ships, piece by piece. They found stability, purpose, and a sense of control they had never known. But in solving one problem, a new, more subtle, and perhaps more dangerous one began to emerge. The solution itself, when taken to its extreme, revealed its own shadow. Peterson began to witness the dark side of an over-reliance on order. He saw it in people who had so successfully implemented his rules that they had built fortifications around their lives, not just foundations. Their routines became unbreakable rituals. Their beliefs calcified into rigid dogmas. They had successfully slain the dragon of chaos, but now they were starving to death inside the fortress they had built, too terrified to venture out for fear of the wilderness. The world outside the walls was unpredictable, messy, and threatening, and they wanted no part of it. This is a pathology of conservative temperament when it's untempered by its opposite, a deep and abiding fear of the unknown that leads to stagnation. He encountered individuals in his practice who had done everything right by societal standards. They had the stable career, the mortgage, the predictable marriage. They followed the rules to the letter, and they were miserable. Their lives were devoid of passion, of spontaneity, of the creative spark that makes life worth living. Their souls were crying out for a dose of the very chaos they had worked so hard to eliminate. Even more dangerously, he saw this same pattern writ large in the political sphere. He watched as ideologies of absolute order, both on the right and the left, promised a utopian certainty in exchange for individual freedom and conscience. They offered a simple, all-encompassing map for complexities of life, but this map was a prison, demanding absolute adherence and punishing any deviation. The quest for pure order, he realized, inevitably leads to tyranny, whether it's the petty tyranny of a self-imposed rigid lifestyle or the grand, horrifying tyranny of a totalitarian state. The great revelation was that order is not the final destination. It is not the ultimate good. It's only half the story. The very thing that saves you from the abyss can become the abyss itself. And so, a new quest began, to understand the necessity of what we fear most, and to chart a course that leads not just into order, but beyond it. The first major breakthrough on this new quest came from a re-examination of the very nature of chaos. We are evolutionarily primed to see the unknown as a threat. The rustle in the grass could be a predator. The unfamiliar territory could hide a cliff. Our instinct is to retreat to the familiar, to the safety of the known, the campfire, the village. But Peterson, looking deeply into foundational myths of humanity, saw a different story being told. He saw that chaos wasn't just a threat. It was also the source of all new things. It was the place of potential. The hero of 1,000 myths does not find his treasure in the center of the village. The village is where things are known, where things are static. The hero's journey, by definition, requires him to leave the safety of the established order and venture voluntarily into dark forest, into the belly of the beast, into the chaotic underworld. Why? Because that is where the gold is hidden. That is where the elixir of life is found. That is where the maiden is imprisoned. Chaos is the raw material from which a new and better order is constantly being built. Consider the artist staring at a blank canvas. That canvas represents pure chaos, a terrifying infinity of possibility. The artist's training, their knowledge of composition and color theory, that's their order. But if they only ever apply the old rules, they will only ever create something derivative and lifeless. True creation happens when they make a bold, uncertain stroke, when they surrender to process and allow something new to emerge in that dance between their skill and the unknown. They must confront the chaos of the blank page to bring forth a new form of order. This principle translates directly into the therapeutic process. Peterson describes working with clients who are trapped in a state of what he calls too much order. Imagine a man who has worked for 20 years in a job he quietly despises. The job is his order. It provides predictable salary, a routine, a clear identity. But his soul is withering. Every day, he does things he hates, says things he doesn't believe, and a part of him dies. This generates a kind of internal malevolent chaos, resentment, bitterness, a desire for destruction. The temptation is to cling even tighter to the hateful order, because the alternative, the chaos of quitting and facing unemployment, seems infinitely worse. The heroic path, however, is to turn and voluntarily confront that chaos. It doesn't mean recklessly quitting on a whim. It means carefully, thoughtfully, venturing into that unknown. It means updating your resume. It means having the terrifying conversation with your spouse. It means taking one small, manageable step into the domain of what you are afraid of. Peterson articulates this in his rule. Imagine who you could be, and then aim single-mindedly at that. That ideal you imagine is a new form of order, a better you. But it exists on the other side of a wall of chaos. The chaos of your own inadequacies, your fears, your bad habits. You cannot reach it by staying where you are. You must journey into that chaos, confronting one piece of it at a time, to bring back the treasure and integrate it into a new, more refined, and more meaningful personal order. This is a great secret. The chaos we fear holds a key to our own renewal. We stagnate and die not when we are confronted by the unknown, but when we refuse a call to adventure and choose the slow, comfortable death of absolute predictability. But this profound realization immediately presents a dangerous complication. If the answer is to venture into chaos, how do you do that without being destroyed? To simply tell someone drowning in anxiety to embrace the unknown is not just unhelpful, it's cruel. A ship made of rotted wood will be smashed to pieces by the first wave. An individual without a core of stability without a well-structured personality, will be disintegrated by the chaos they are being told to confront. The first principle, the call to creative adventure, is only half of a crucial dialectic. It must be balanced by its opposite, or it becomes a recipe for disaster. This led Peterson to the deeper, more nuanced truth. You can only afford to dance with chaos to the degree that you are grounded in order. Your capacity to explore the unknown is directly proportional to your rootedness in the known. You need a base camp, a secure foundation from which to launch your expeditions into the wilderness. Without it, you are not an explorer. You are a refugee, fleeing from one disaster to another. Think of the structure of a great story, like Harry Potter, a story Peterson analyzes with incredible depth. Harry is constantly thrown into the most profound chaos imaginable, facing down soul-sucking demons, giant serpents, an embodiment of evil itself. What allows him to survive and even triumph? It is not his recklessness. It is his profound embeddedness in order. He is grounded in the unwavering loyalty of his friendships with Ron and Hermione. He is guided by the established traditions and wisdom of Hogwarts and mentors like Dumbledore. He is anchored by the love of his parents, a force of order so powerful it continues to protect him long after their deaths. It is this web of stable, reliable, trustworthy order that gives him the courage and the strength to confront the forces that would otherwise tear him apart. His heroism is a product of the interplay between his foundation and his willingness to step beyond it. This principle is not abstract. It is intensely practical. It is the very essence of building a resilient life. Consider the institution of marriage. At its core, a marriage vow is a radical act of creating order. It is a promise to voluntarily limit your future options, to bind yourself to one person for better or for worse. To the modern mind, this can seem like a restriction of freedom, an unnecessary constraint. But Peterson argues it's the opposite. The vow creates a structure, a container of trust and security so robust that it allows both individuals to face the inevitable chaos of life. When illness strikes, when a job is lost, when tragedy unfolds, the order the vow holds, it creates a safe harbor. It is precisely because of this profound stability that the partners can afford to be vulnerable, to take creative risks in their careers, to grow and change, because they know they have a secure anchor point to return to. This is a function of all healthy order, from a disciplined daily schedule to a deeply held set of ethical principles. Rule V, do not do what you hate, perfectly illustrates this. It sounds like a revolutionary call to cast off all responsibility, but its true implementation requires an immense commitment to a higher order. To stop doing what you hate, you must first have the discipline to notice it, the honesty to articulate it, and the courage to formulate a new, better plan. You must replace the low-quality, soul-destroying order with a high-quality, consciously chosen one. You cannot simply step into a vacuum. You must build a better ship before you abandon the one that's sinking. This is the deeper truth. Courage is not the absence of foundation. It is a product of one. The grand synthesis, the unifying aha moment, arrives when you stop seeing chaos and order as two opposing forces in a war you must win. They are not enemies to be conquered, but two fundamental, codependent realities of existence that you must learn to mediate between. The ultimate goal is not victory for one side, but a dynamic, ever-shifting balance between the two. The place of meaning, of growth, of life itself, is on the knife's edge that separates them. Peterson finds the most profound symbolic representation of this idea in the ancient Taoist symbol of the yin and yang. It's an image many of us have seen, but few have truly understood. It's not just a circle split into a black half and a white half. Look closer. It's a dynamic dance. The black swirl of chaos contains within it a small to white order, and the white swirl of order contains a small to black chaos. This is the map of reality. It tells us that even in the midst of the most terrifying, unpredictable, and chaotic situation, there's a point of light, a seed of potential order that you can find and cultivate. It is the truth you can still tell, the small act of responsibility you can still take, the hand you can reach out. And conversely, it tells us in your most stable, secure, and predictable systems, your job, your relationships, your beliefs, there's always a seed of chaos, an anomaly, a flaw, a hint of the unknown that, if ignored, can grow and consume the entire structure. The meaningful life is a process, not a state. It is a perpetual act of confronting the chaos that arises at the borders of your competence and transforming it into habitable, productive order. You are the hero who stands on the border between the known world and the great, unexplored wilderness, and your purpose is to mediate between the two. This is what it means to go beyond order. It is not to abandon order for chaos, nor is it to cling to order and deny chaos. It is to use the stability of your established knowledge and routines as a platform from which to explore what you do not yet understand. It is to notice the things that trouble you, the questions that you cannot answer, the subtle dissonances in your life, and to turn towards them with curiosity instead of fear. That feeling of being unsettled by an old memory, that's the thought of chaos. The answer is to write about it, to transform the chaotic emotions into the order of a coherent narrative. That difficult conversation you've been avoiding with a loved one, that's the chaos. The answer is to use the order of truthful, careful speech to navigate it. You take a little piece of the unknown, the terrifying, the chaotic, and you wrestle with it until you have integrated it into your being, expanding your domain of competence and creating a new, more sophisticated, and more robust form of order. This is the eternal rhythm of life and growth. It's a dance. You take a step into the unknown, then a step back to consolidate your gains. You build a wall, then you climb over it to see what lies beyond. You are always and forever on that sacred border. So we return to that universal feeling of being caught. The path forward is not to choose a side, not to run towards the safety of the walls, or leap into the abyss of freedom. The path is the tightrope between them. The blueprint, then, is to consciously build a life of discipline, routine, and principle, a life of order, not as an end in itself, but as a necessary vessel to carry you on your voyages into the unknown. Establish good habits. Keep your promises to yourself and others. Tell the truth. This builds the integrity of your ship. Then, with that strong vessel beneath your feet, you can begin to sail. Pay attention to what your conscience tells you is wrong. Address the small things that are out of place in your life before they become large dragons. Turn voluntarily to face the challenges you know you must face. Take on more responsibility than you think you can handle. Each time you do this, you bring a little more of the chaotic unknown into the light of conscious understanding, transforming it into a part of your habitable world. You expand the domain of order, not by building higher walls, but by courageously stepping out and claiming new territory. This journey, this dance on the edge of chaos and order, is not easy. It demands everything you have, but it is on that precipice, and only there, that you will find the antidote to the suffering of life, a deeply felt, hard-won sense of meaning. Understanding this is the first step, but the real transformation happens when you begin to walk the path. If this conversation resonates with you, if you feel that call to find the balance in your own life, then join us. Subscribe, not just to the channel, but to the idea that we can all become better mediators between the forces that define our existence. This is your adventure, and you are the hero it has been waiting for. Walk that line and become who you could be.